Hello, my name is Joanne Solem. As a 50-year member of the Howard County Bird Club, I made the following presentation on October 30th, 2022, on the occasion of the club's 50th anniversary celebration at the Howard County Conservancy.
As we gather today to celebrate the first 50 years of the Howard County Bird Club, it's natural to ask, who are we and what do we do? Our formal mission statement says that we promote the knowledge, development, protection, and conservation of bird life and other naturally occurring species. But how does this translate into actions and activities? It all began on the evening of November 1st, 1972. Nanine Rhinelander gathered about 15 people in a meeting room in the Century Building in downtown Columbia. They met to form a Howard County chapter of the Maryland Ornithological Society. From that meeting, and almost all meetings since, virtually everything that we do can be placed under these 7 major categories. I'll treat each one in turn, providing a few highlights of the past half century. The first public meeting was held December 14th, 1972. The program was the noted ornithologist Chandler Robbins, and he spoke on the winter birds of Howard County. Chan continued to be a very special supporter of this chapter for 45 years until his death in 2017. That first meeting was a crowded meeting room. So in January of 1973, they moved to a larger venue at Swansfield Elementary School. And over the past half century, for various reasons, we've had to move a number of times. In September of 2011, the Robinson Nature Center, a county-owned nature center, opened. And in October of 2011, we moved in, and we now consider this our home. Meetings are held September through May, and the topics are mainly birds, but, a lot of other natural history subjects as well, along with conservation and environmental things. Over these 50 years, we have held a total of 450 programs, a considerable contribution to the cultural and intellectual life of Howard County. We've always had some sort of a social meeting, and annually we've had either a picnic or a potluck. The pandemic, of course, changed that. The lower right-hand corner shows in 2022, our social meeting was an outdoor meeting at the Skywatch at Mount Pleasant. Almost as important or equally important as programs have been field trips. You'll notice that the first one was scheduled just 2 days after the first program. David Holmes led that trip to Sandy Point State Park and Kent Island. These trips can be half-day, whole-day, weekends. They can pop up. We sponsor most of them, but we sometimes co-sponsor trips. Howard County Department of Recreation and Parks has been among our most frequent co-sponsor. Some of our most popular trips have been co-sponsored with them. We sponsor with other MOS chapters, with the Howard County Conservancy. We have an annual Earth Day walk with them, and with the Robinson Nature Center. They are mainly bird trips, but all of natural history has been served in one way or another. We've been very fortunate in having many members who are well versed in other aspects of natural history. We've held butterfly trips for at least 30 years. We'll go into more detail with that in the future. In this first half century, we have sponsored at least 1,750 field trips. Think about that. That's an incredible number of field trips. How has that been possible? It's only been possible because we have dozens of members leading these trips who have shared their time, their knowledge, and their love of the natural world. Each of these former leaders deserves our heartfelt thanks and applause. One of the most important things that we do is to collect bird data. Individual records come in many different forms, and people keep them in different ways. Increasingly, there has been a use of eBird, but certainly not entirely. Beginning with autumn 1979, I began compiling Howard County records, and these were shared with the state for Maryland BirdLife. That was discontinued when Maryland BirdLife no longer published seasonal records after 2018, and highlights were sent to North American birds. Seasonal summaries still appear in the goldfinch. That began with the autumn 1993 season. It is continuing. Next year will be the 30th year. We compile an annual list of county species. That began in 1979 with David Holmes. And you'll notice that that's been almost 40 years, and there have been only 4 people who have compiled those lists, which is a testament to their interest in this particular idea. For the most avid birders, we have what's called a 200 Club. They're people, members, who have seen at least 200 bird species in the county during any number of years. And there are also some people who see 200 species each year. Yes, that's possible. You may not think so. Every year, anywhere from half a dozen to 12 or 15 people actually notch 200 bird species in Howard County. That's quite an accomplishment. Perhaps the most avid birders participate in big days. Technically, these are a 24-hour period. Most of those that are run in Howard County have not been that long, but there are official and unofficial. If you do an official one, you have a whole series of rules and regulations you must follow. We have done big days as field trips, and there have been some official big days. This means that you have a team of anywhere from 2 to any number of people who visit a variety of sites that are usually predetermined in the course of however long, whatever portion of the day they decide to use, and just notch as many different species as they can. In addition to individual records, the club collects some seasonal records and some club records. We have a May count that's on the second Saturday in May. That, you'll notice, was initiated in 1947, long before the Howard County chapter was formed. We began compiling results for this county in 1975. Midwinter count is generally held on the first Saturday in February. That was begun in 1986. Fall count is the third Saturday in September, and that was begun in 1995. The only Christmas count that has any portion of Howard County within its circle is the Triadelphia count, and that was established 25 years before this chapter was founded, so we have no control over how much of Howard County is included, which is about 1/4 to 1/3 of the county. Most of these counts have been followed by a tally either at a person's home or at a nature center or restaurant. Breeding bird atlases are another way of collecting bird data. We have participated in 3 statewide atlases and, along with Montgomery County, a prototype atlas in the early 1970s. That was the means of figuring out how to do North American atlasing in general. The early 70s atlas was published, as it's shown in the lower left, in Maryland BirdLife. The 2 center pictures are the statewide atlases that have been published in book form. The lower right, we are in the process of the 3rd statewide breeding bird atlas. It will be completed in 2024, and as yet we're unsure of what the result will be and what form it will take. Our final major data collection material was through the Parks Checklist project, which we ran jointly with the Howard County Department of Recreation and Parks and the Columbia Association. Those groups wanted seasonal bird lists that they could print and hand out to the public, and they asked for them for the largest of the county parks and for the Columbia Lakes. The question obviously will arise then, okay, you have all this data, where is it compiled? How do I have access to it? Well, on the Howard County Bird Club website, there is this absolutely amazing material under the Howard County Annotated Bird Records. Russ Ruffing has put together not only the 50-year data from the actual Bird Club data, but 20 years prior to that and some even historical records. You'll notice that the format is twofold in the sense that there is text on the left, graphics on the right. The text has a whole variety of material, including whether it's a migrant, whether it's a breeding species, when you can expect, whether it's rare, unusual. If it is an extreme rarity, each of the sightings of the 3 or 4 times it's been seen will be listed with location, date, and observer. Sometimes the all-time high is listed. So there's a lot of material in a compact form. If that doesn't appeal to you, you simply look at the graphics, and you can see with the dots, dashes, bars, thickness of the bars, when you can expect to see a particular species, if it has been seen regularly, frequently, if it's an annual or if it's a year-round. There's a lot of different things that can be judged just by looking at the graphics. It is the most valuable bird record compilation that we have, and it is more accurate than any other that exists. Communication has always been extremely important to this chapter. Notice that the very first newsletter that was published is dated when? December 1972. December was that month when you had the first program and the first field trip. Martha Chestum was the first editor. She single-handedly, typewriter and mimeograph, mailed 10 issues a year. Amazing. We still have a newsletter. We've had one continuously. We now put out a newsletter 5 times a year. It's computer-generated, software package, full color. Most of our members receive it online. We do, however, still publish hard copies for the people who are most anxious to read it individually. It was named the Goldfinch beginning with the September-October 1996 issue. Communication in those early days with the newsletter also, I should have added, included telephone. Today, some of the younger members will actually laugh, thinking that people would pick up a telephone and contact one another. But that was not only accepted, but it was one of the rare ways, the few ways you had of making contact. We came into the electronic age in December of 1995 when Darius Ecker, one of our members, started what he referred to as the electronic goldfinch, using spare computer parts and a dedicated phone line. He and his wife Paula were the webmasters through June of 2000. In September of 2000, the website, the new webmaster, Bob Solem, moved the website to the World Wide Web as howardbirds.org. He greatly expanded the material, and the site became a premier natural history reference because it is county specific, and that is an exceedingly rare aspect of any of these websites, which means that you can go into the Howard County Bird Club website, and virtually everything you find there is specific to Howard County. Why is this valuable? Because it saves you a lot of time and trouble. Our field lists, our photo galleries, our site guides, because they are focused on the county, you don't have to go through, if depending on whether you're using a field guide or whether you're using a particular app, you don't have to go through the eastern birds of the county or the North American birds. All you need to know is, what am I likely to see right here in this county, which can make your search a lot easier. Communication is not only on the website, but we provide email alerts of different forms. And habitat preservation and conservation has been part of our DNA since that very first meeting. We have had a committee, and a conservation committee, and a conservation chair since the founding meeting. In those early years, there was no recycling by the county. There were private companies in the Columbia area that recycled. We had members who saved their bottles, cans, newspapers, trucked them to these companies, and they would not pay you directly, but you could designate a nonprofit to which the money would go. Periodically, usually on a quarterly basis, they would send the treasurer a check, $17.82, $26.46. That doesn't sound like much, but when you are a new organization and you have no real money, any of those amounts was welcome. We always encouraged our members to send letters, yes, snail mail, and telephone, later email officials concerning local, state, federal environmental legislation. Our conservation chairs have frequently, if necessary, testified, especially before Howard County Council or, in some cases, committees for the state. Increasingly, we have found that it is helpful to work with umbrella organizations and through the Maryland Ornithological Society, because this naturally increases our individually as a chapter. We have supported a good many environmental projects, several dozen in fact, and over the course of 50 years we have contributed more than $100,000 to a variety of projects in the United States, North America, Central America, so that ranges from expanding cloud forest in Costa Rica to establishing Nassawango Sanctuary on Maryland's eastern shore, or providing pollinator meadows right here in Howard County. Our Howard County projects include working with other organizations. The Howard County Department of Recreation and Parks has been the recipient of a number of our projects. We established the Clegg Meadow at the Middle Patuxent Environmental Area. We've helped with woodcock habitat improvement there. Our first pollinator meadow was Emmy's Meadow at Centennial Park, and we have since supported a number of other pollinator meadows. We've had a number of projects with an ongoing partnership with the Howard County Conservancy, and we sponsored a small part of a pollinator garden at Howard Community College. Increasingly, we have realized that most of the land in the county, of course, is in private hands. And if we can figure out ways to work with private landowners, that this is probably the most effective way of increasing and improving various bird habitat. Two of our projects have included, in the case of Underwood Road in 2017 and 2018, we leased 11 acres there to protect breeding habitat for dick cissels, which is a rare Maryland breeding species. In 2019, we were unable to continue the lease. The landowner had other plans for it. That was the bad news. The good news was the dick cissels seemed to have liked the area. They found other close by locations, even on that same farm, and continued to nest there in small numbers. In just this year, in 2022, which is 5 years after that initial lease, one of our members photographed a fledgling dick cissel and a female carrying nesting material for a second brood. We're working with the Sharps at Waterford Farm on Jennings Chapel Road to establish Waterford Flats, which we hope will be a real attraction for shorebirds and other water birds. To date, the glossy ibis shown in the lower right is perhaps the most spectacular bird that has been photographed there. How have all these projects been funded? Obviously, they all cost money, or many of them do. From 1979 to 2021, we sponsored either one or two seed sales each year. And the profits from some of these over the years have been substantial and have enabled us to fund a good many projects. Bookstore profits. No. This isn't a brick and mortar store, never was, but simply a couple of boxes of books, tapes, records, material that birders might want, that a member would buy at wholesale, mark up 10 or 15%, which was still well under retail, giving our members an opportunity to save a little money and at the same time make a small profit. We've been fortunate to have had generous gifts by a number of individual members. Frequently when we've had a major project, we've simply let people know, and a good many people have written checks. We've also been fortunate within the last 20 years to have received 3 bequests. And those, especially the last one, which we have just received, will perhaps allow us to go into areas that we, when we first were founded, would not have dreamed would be possible. Education and outreach has always been important to us. Education both of our members and the general public. Outreach, of course, to help reach as many people and spread the word about the natural world as we can. We have offered workshops, mostly birds, but we've also offered a couple of wildflowers. Classes that were sometimes one time, other times were multi-week, like 4 sessions or 8 sessions, sometimes classes with field trips in conjunction, and we have offered those in conjunction with the Howard County Department of Recreation and Parks, the Community College, and the Conservancy. We have also published material. Many of our print publications are now out of print, but have been moved to the website where they can be either read or downloaded as one desires. The book in the middle, Birding Howard County, is no longer in print, but portions of it are on the website in sections so that it's still available. Most of it is still available. The lower right shows two of the colored pages that have been produced by the butterfly people. Some of those are actually printed and used as handouts in field trips, classes, and tabling events. In other cases, they are available on the website, and you can download them yourself or simply look at them as you choose. Our website is a great location for education, not just birds, but a good many aspects of natural history. We now have an entire segment on beginning birding. So if you are just beginning, if you are just dipping your toe into the birding world, you can make reference to all kinds of possibilities so that you have at your fingertips the ability to ask the questions of how do I order binoculars? How do I use them? How do I go about birding? What's the method for learning? And all kinds of references, both local and far, so that you can pick and choose what is of interest to you. We have photo galleries of birds, butterflies, dragonflies, herps, and these are county specific. They're photographs taken in the county of species that are here, and in most cases they cover a good many. In fact, in the case of a few of the situations, they cover virtually everything that is possible to see in the county. This gives you a little bit of an edge when you find something. If whether or not you take a picture of it, you can look at it from several different views. Outreach is the flip side of our education. From the very beginning, in fact, the first year, they began putting together slide programs. If you remember slides, there were 2 bird slide programs and 1 wildflower, if I remember correctly. And one of the very first purchases we made was a projector. This was in response to the demand that we were listed in various county listings of organizations, and sooner or later we began getting questions. People would telephone. I'm the program chair for the Twig and Branch Garden Club. Do you people ever go out and talk to groups about birds? And we were able to say then, all you have to do is produce a screen, and we will be there with our projector and our slides. And we talked to any number of different groups. We also went into the schools when we were asked, but we found relatively soon that students were not really thrilled by seeing slides. And in the late 1970s, 1976 or 7, one of our board meetings, someone who was on the board said, I just found this beautiful red-shouldered hawk dead in my pasture, and I've really, does anybody know what I could do with it? I hate to leave it there just to rot. And one of our board members said, well, it wouldn't be all that difficult to get licenses for state and federal uh, specimen collection. And if we were able to taxidermy a couple of specimens, it might be a lot more interesting for children than slides. So we indeed applied for the necessary permits, and it wasn't that difficult. And we sent out word to our members to start collecting the dead specimens they found. Now, not all specimens were in good condition, but there were some that were. We found a gentleman in Carroll County who taxidermied birds on the side, one of these hobbies that he did every once, nights, weekends, and he didn't charge very much, which was a real key. What we did then was take specimens to him, and when we got a batch from him, we would take them to a meeting, put the name and the amount that he charged for each one on the bird, and we had members who said, I'll sponsor that bird, or I want to sponsor the black-throated blue warbler, whatever. And that way we did not have to use any of our habitat money or money that had been given for other purposes, and we had a growing collection of mounted birds. Members built wooden cases for them so we could carry them around, and the birds got a lot of work. We went to the county fair for a week every August for decades. We had a table in the vegetable barn there. Sometimes Rec and Parks had programs at the Columbia Mall, and there were 3 or 4 years that we spent a whole weekend staffing a table there. We spoke to as many as 40 groups every year. In fact, one of our members even spoke to all of the students at Swansfield Elementary School. It took her over the 3 days, but she got to every student. So you can see that we had anywhere from half a dozen to almost 20 people who, in the course of a year, borrowed some specimens, took them out, talked to everything from a nursery school class to Rotary, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, 4-H, and a lot of the various classes in the Howard County school system. Unfortunately, in the year 2000, we received information that the Department of Interior regulations had changed, and we could no longer keep specimens unless we had a way to publicly display them. We did not, since we had no building, and we were panicked because there was no group in the county. At that time, there was not a nature center that could take them. There was no museum. The community college didn't want them. The schools didn't have room for them. Howard County Rec and Parks came to our rescue, and they said, well, we will display some in the headquarters building in the lobby and keep them and license them until we get a county nature center, and at that point the birds will be transferred to the nature center and they will have a permanent location. At the time the Rec and Parks took them on, there was no nature center in the plans. That was 2000, which was well before the Robinson Nature Center. But they took care of the birds for a decade, and they have been transferred to the Robinson Nature Center, and they reside permanently there. The Bird Club no longer has ownership of them. We also have an information board at Centennial Park. It's attached to the concession building at the south entrance. Jeff Culler changes that board seasonally, puts up pictures and descriptions that help give the people who walk around the lake an idea of what they're going to see. It's not just birds. He throws in a picture now and then of a snake or a turtle. And in the summertime, he has a board that is exclusively butterflies. We have, in addition, of course, a trifold display, brochures, rack cards, do what we can to advertise. The American goldfinch, official bird, doesn't really fit easily anywhere, but it's certainly one of our more interesting experiences. In 1977, the executive branch of Howard County contacted our president and asked if we would be interested in naming a species of bird as the Howard County official bird. Well, we were thrilled. So we began polling our members. We established some parameters, like the bird had to be here all year, easily seen, nesting, etc. And we came up with something like 15 species. They were voted on. And by September of 1977, we were down to Carolina wren and American goldfinch as our choices. The American goldfinch won. And at the October meeting, members authorized a watercolor drawing of goldfinches by Joe Dye, a local artist. We framed it and gave it to Howard County so it could hang in the office building. All of that took place near the end of 1977. Well, the wheels of bureaucracy grind slowly, and it took the Howard County Council until May of 1978 to officially adopt the American goldfinch as Howard County's official bird. The last, but not by any means the least, of the major headings that I wanted to treat today is natural history. Many people who start the study of birds, or who began in Howard County looking at birds, say, all I'm going to look at is birds. I'm not going to look at any other aspects of natural history. Well, it's true that you have to sort of focus to begin with, because there's so much material that you have to process. But the fact is, virtually no one can ignore the fact that everything is interconnected, and that if you study birds, it doesn't take very long before you are looking at the particular vegetation because of what birds nest in or roost in, or is their natural habitat. You're looking at maybe insects and herps, possibly snakes, because of what they eat or feed their young. So it's a matter of, call it osmosis perhaps, in which you can't help but learn some other aspects of the natural world. And the more you realize that everything is interconnected, the more likely you are to understand and want to know more. We are very fortunate that we've had a number of our members who are very well versed in various aspects of natural history. And of course, we're very fortunate that the last 25 years have seen this tremendous increase through computers, in which we have both been able to access more information, and with digital cameras have been able to take pictures and then look to see what it is we have found. We have participated, or our members have been leaders in these following major projects, just to give you an idea of what a diverse group of people we have. We had a wildflower survey from the late 1970s to the mid-1990s, which particularly explored blooming dates. Odonates, we created an odonate list for the county that began in the early 1990s with Richard Orr as the mentor and leader. The Maryland Amphibian and Herp Atlas was a statewide effort, and our local coordinator was Sue Muller. At the time, she worked for Department of Recreation and Parks, but she was also one of our members, and we had a number of our members who were very avid and very helpful in assisting that particular atlas. We have people who have been and continue to be contributors to Maryland Biodiversity Project, and that began in 2012 and now, of course, is a decade old. The Butterfly Pollinator Group is an active group that deserves a little more discussion. Beginning in the 1980s, we had an occasional butterfly trip, but in May of 1990, Richard Smith began leading at least one butterfly trip each year. In 1993, Dick created The Butterflies of Howard County, a biological summary, which is a 2-page trifold that is an absolute beauty in terms of reference material in a compact form, because he was able to include not only the name of every butterfly seen in the county, its Latin name, its larval host, its flight period, its favorite nectaring plants, and it's updated periodically. So it is a constant good reference. It's the essential butterfly tool for this county. In April of 2011, the webmaster created a butterfly photo gallery. It was an experiment. He wasn't sure that there would be enough pictures that had been taken in the county of butterflies to even make a decent beginning. But when he sent out word and asked for people to send in images, he was flooded. And he, of course, forwarded most of them to Dick Smith so that Dick could be sure that whatever was shown was correctly identified. And he was extremely impressed because some of the pictures were actually of butterflies that were pretty unusual, and in fact, in one case, he thought didn't even exist in the county anymore. So he thought, oh, if we have all of this enthusiasm, maybe we can actually design a project that will capture some good data. So he designed a 5-year project, and it sounded simple enough, and it was going to try to figure out what the current county species were and what were their flight times. 2013 was the prototype year. That got the bugs out. First, just a few surveyors. Then there was 2014 was going to be the first formal survey. Well, during all of this planning, Dick pretty much said, I'm great at identifying the butterflies and designing the survey, but he said, I'm not really very interested or good at organizing the actual surveys. I need an assistant or a co-chair. Linda Hunt stepped up, and she became Dick's co-chair, and the two of them worked together, each with their own sphere of responsibility. 2014, 2015, good years for the survey, and at that time we also began establishing pollinator meadows in Howard County, and Dick put together a seed mix that combined larval host plants and nectaring sources, which could be used by rec and parks, which was excellent. 2016 was the third year of the survey. Unfortunately, in August of that year, Dick died very suddenly. And that, of course, left the whole project in a real state, an uproar, because the question was, where do we go from here? What do we do? Linda's role was not part of the survey, but she was the person who was organizing the people. She asked for a co-chair if there was a desire to go forward, and the surveyors wanted to continue. Kevin Heffernan stepped up, and he picked up an interest that had been something he enjoyed since childhood, and he became the co-chair, and they continued. By the end of 2022, they had extended it, and as far as the butterfly people are concerned, they'll continue as long as there is enthusiasm for it. Emmy's Meadow, of course, was our first venture into pollinator meadows, and we have continued to add to those. Howard County government has become more interested in pollinators and in butterflies. We have been designated, Howard County is designated as a bee city, and Kevin Heffernan is our representative on the Bee City Committee. Kevin and Linda have also produced multiple references to help the surveyors or anyone interested in butterflies, especially to help discriminate among some of the really tough identification problems. And so there's a whole pollinator resource page that has everything from gardening tips to butterfly identification, links to a lot of valuable information. That original small group of butterfly enthusiasts, there were only a dozen or so in that first survey, have expanded to almost 300 people on the email list. Not all of these people are Howard County Bird Club members. They don't have to be. But we obviously encourage them to join us. We provide funding and leadership so that this has become a vital part of the Bird Club. As we look back on these first 50 years, each member can take pride in being part of an organization that consistently combines data collection with education, habitat preservation with outreach, and advocacy with enjoyment. That small group that met at the Century Plaza that November evening in 1972 could not possibly have imagined what they were creating and the impact that organization would have. Any more than we, gathered here today, can predict what the next 50 years holds. We can only hope that in 2072, when the Howard County Bird Club's first century is celebrated, that those present then can look back with satisfaction, knowing they built on the foundation of the first 50 years, and that they continue to monitor, to advocate for, and most of all, to enjoy the birds and the butterflies and the rest of the natural world. Happy 50th anniversary, Howard County Bird Club. On to 100. We gratefully acknowledge the almost dozen and a half individuals who gave us permission to use the images in this PowerPoint. As a way to fund the activities of this 50th anniversary year, the club sold shirts. And to determine the logo that would be used, we held a contest in September of 2021. This design was the winner. Sue Probst was the artist. And all of the activities of 2022 relating to the 50th anniversary celebration were presented by the 50th Anniversary Committee. They consisted of Joanne Solem, Chair, Mary Lou Clark, David Holmes, Mary Maxey, David Sandler, Kristen Troughton, Kelsey Wellens, and Bob Solem, webmaster.